All right. Why can't anyone see me? All right. Let's see. So it looks like this might actually be working now. Alex, can you actually hear me? They've changed the live stream thing a little bit. They've changed the interface a bit. Not 100% sure if this is working though. Looks a little. Oh, you can hear me. Okay, great. Excellent. Glad you can hear me. Looks like the video is cleared up a little bit. Excellent. All right. So glad to see you all today. So I'm gonna share my I'm gonna share that I am actually on right now on Twitter or the various other places at some point. So what do you think, guys? What do you want to talk about today? We're talking. I mean, I think gun violence, gun laws, that kind of thing is kind of the thing right now, and something that I do want to talk about. And I'm actually going to touch on it a little bit on my video that is coming out on Thursday, but I wanted to talk about it here as well. So it's weird. I'm trying to actually share this to Twitter. So I'm not sure if that's going to work though, but that's all right. So where do you want to start, guys? Hopefully, by the way, the chat is going to end up in the recording of this when it ends up going onto YouTube. The solution seems clear, but these politicians seem like sociopaths. Money, money, money. Well, the NRA does spend millions of dollars every political cycle. They are spending millions of dollars, millions and millions of dollars to buy politicians, to make sure that they are getting their needs met. And by their needs met, it means basically having no gun restrictions or as few gun restrictions as possible. That is what they want, and that is what they paid Marco Rubio for, and every other politician that they give money to. And those politicians are nearly 100% Republican, not 100%, but pretty close. And exactly. So Hat 43 said working class people should be armed, no gun ban. Now, so this is where the tricky part comes in. There are, as soon as anyone starts talking about any sort of gun laws at all, immediately somebody from the NRA or Republican, somebody that's against this, will say, well, no, they should be armed. And we have a Second Amendment and all that. And I totally get that, by the way. Yes, of course we have a Second Amendment. Yes, we do. And that Second Amendment can still absolutely be honored and be kept, because we have to keep it as part of our Constitution. But just saying that we're going to put some speed bumps in so that somebody that wants a gun that can spit out, hundreds of rounds a minute or whatever, whatever it is, we can say, well, you know what, maybe we're going to make it a little bit harder, make a little bit of a some sort of test, or some sort of not literal test. I mean, some sort of law that says, well, maybe we need to restrict access to those kinds of guns or those kinds of bullets. But the NRA doesn't really care about any of that. They're just like, well, we don't want any restrictions on anything. That's the bottom line. So how do we get from there, where we from the NRA's position, which is no laws on anything, to some kind of a position between that and ban all guns, which most people are not for. Yes, of course, there's a few people that are for that, but to me, I would say the NRA position is extreme as well, to have no laws, to have no restrictions at all. So where in the middle can we fall on that? The NRA has already decided that they're not going to be anywhere near, the middle at all. They're just going to go full out nothing. So what do you think? So yeah, go door to door and take them all away. I mean, that's kind of that's what the NRA people will use to get their fans and their lackeys, I would call them, to get all up in arms, no pun intended, and get upset that, oh, the government's going to take my guns away. That's not going to happen. But that's the fear. And if they can instill that fear in those people, then that's they're just going to rile up their base, get it moving. And so yeah. Hello, Ed Boone Sucks. I see he's on star. There have been changes to the Constitution before. We don't have to keep anything. That is true, Alex. We do not have to keep that part of the Constitution at all. If we wanted to change the Constitution, we could. However, in reality, there's about a 0% chance of that happening anytime in the near future. So to me, that's not even, I mean, it's true. It's a point worth addressing and mentioning, but honestly, it's such a remote possibility that it's not even something that I'm probably going to give a lot of time to, just because it's not practical, and 3/4 of the states have to ratify it. I don't see that ever happening for much of any issue, much less the gun issue, in any time in the near future. So yeah. And yes, Stacy and Gray, you said you have to think about when the Second Amendment was made. They had no idea there'd be guns like this back then. That's true. I'm sure that they did not have any inkling. I mean, if they knew that this was what was going on now, and that we had this kind of firepower that could clear a room of dozens of people within seconds, then yeah, I suspect that the amendment would be worded very differently. Even if it weren't, though, I mean, we're still, yes, the founding fathers were, they were very smart people for the time and all of that. But of course, we're the ones living right now, so we've got to figure out what we're going to do about it right now. And right now, the NRA has bought their way into all of into this current situation, which is basically almost no gun laws, and we have fewer and fewer gun laws all the time because states are stripping away what few gun laws there were. So yeah. So on Hat 43 says on Twitter, people were going hell yes from your cold dead hands. Yeah, that I can sympathize with that statement. That's not necessarily the way I'd go about arguing it, but when you look at some of the very hardcore gun nuts and the people that are just like, I don't want a single restriction or a single piece of legislation on it at all, then yeah, I can understand that frustration. What do you do against a lobby of that size that's giving that kind of money to politicians? It's easy to understand. Very easy to understand. Did I watch? Let's see. Ed Boone Sucks says, did you watch any of TFM or RGE videos? TFM. I do not. I'm not sure what those acronyms are. Let's see. Kyrax said, do you think arming teachers who volunteer would be helpful? You know, if teachers want to volunteer and it's legal, then I mean, okay, I guess. But to offer this up as a solution is absolutely a non-starter. I mean, that can be. I mean, if there's a school district somewhere and they're in some super red state where it's fine to carry and they want to do that, I mean, I just don't think they should be under the notion though that this is actually going to help anything in particular. Um, if they think they can do it, sure. I mean, hell, Trump said today that he thinks that even without a weapon, he would have run in there to confront the gunman, or I think he said that yesterday, which I found hilarious because I mean, Captain Bone Spurs got out of Vietnam for bone spurs, thinks that he has the physical courage to run into a building with an active shooter. I don't think that's happening at all, but okay. So that's kind of nonsense, and I think the whole thing with the teachers is nonsense too. I don't think that's going to actually help anything. And anytime you add more guns to the situation, yes, you're going to add more accidents. You're going to add situations where the police come in and then suddenly there's all kinds of people with guns. That's not a great scenario either. I saw an interesting meme on Facebook that said something like, "How would you like to be the black teacher who's holding a gun when the police come in and try to take down the shooter?" Yeah, I mean that's a consideration too. I wouldn't want to be in that position either. I wouldn't even want to be in that position as a white guy, much less as a black guy. Can you imagine police coming in there? They have to make a split-second decision. Are you a good guy with a gun or a bad guy with a gun? So no, do not want. Robert Rizzo says, after the failure of the Articles of the Confederacy, the founders should have known militias wouldn't cut it. The idea that states wouldn't have to pay for a federal army was a pipe dream that failed almost immediately. Yeah, and that was also a sign of the times as well. I mean, this was well over 200 years ago now. Who could have known where this was going to end up? But you don't have to change the Second Amendment in order to actually make changes to gun laws. There are plenty of gun laws that you could have that would not run afoul of the Second Amendment at all. I mean, yes, there are certain gun laws that have been struck down, like a complete handgun ban, like in certain cities and stuff like that. That I can kind of understand, but with an AR-15 or something where you've got these bullets that just rip through you and just destroy organs within a second, just explode inside you. I'd read this article about different kinds of bullets, and it's fascinating, like doctors that have treated patients that have been hit by bullets from handguns. It's very different. They're very different wounds than people who've been hit from certain types of bullets from AR-15s and that kind of thing. It's a completely different world, and that I think should be addressed as well. So Croy Tucker says, I think the most logical thing would be having armed school cops. Yeah, I think that armed school cops. I mean, that's fine. There's a lot of but the thing is, at this last shooting, there was an armed cop there. There was an armed deputy there, and he didn't go into the building. He now claims that he thought the shooting was outside, but he waited outside the whole time while this was going on. I don't believe that for a second, by the way, that he thought the shooting was outside. I mean, come on. I really don't think he thought that. I don't think there were any shots fired outside that I'm aware of. I believe all the shots were fired from in the building. I don't know why he would have thought that. And he just hung out outside, didn't do anything. He was fired a couple days later. But all this, adding resource officers, tons of schools already have them. At Columbine, there was a resource officer, and he was not able to stop the shooting either. Even though you'd figure, okay, yeah, a guy, or well, in the case of Columbine, two guys with guns roaming down the halls, but you'd think that one person would be able to potentially stop them, but it's not that simple, and they don't always have the skills to do it. And you always think as a resource officer, your main reason for being a resource officer is to handle like petty crimes and stuff like that. You're not expecting someone to come in there with an AR-15. So to me, you've got to address the issue sometime in the timeline before the AR-15 is on the school grounds with someone wielding the AR-15 comes onto the school grounds. So yeah. Just regulate guns like cars and be done with it. I'd be totally fine with that. But obviously the NRA would be very upset with that. They would never want that. They would be completely against it. But the NRA pretty much runs things at the moment because, of course, Republicans run the government at the moment, and they will never abide by it. But November is coming up. TikTok. Those of you who are Americans, and by Americans I mean apostrophe Muricans, by Americans, you can vote this November, and you can vote some of these turkeys out. So, time to give that a shot. Yes, it's General Shroom says it's true that handguns are much less dangerous from ballistic standpoint, but handguns are responsible for a large majority of deaths. Yes, that is true. Semi-auto rifles do have a lower total death count than blunt objects and that sort of thing. But these are things that it would be very easy to put some kind of restriction on, and not even be completely unavailable. But everybody always says, yeah, criminals are going to get guns. However they're going to get guns, which, okay, that's fine. So criminals are going to get guns, and they're not going to follow gun laws. Well, okay, well, first of all, why have any laws then? I mean, criminals aren't going to follow the law, then why? So, but assuming that you are going to say, okay, they're not necessarily going to follow the law, but most of these people that are doing these school shootings, they're not. I think they're thinking of like random gangsters or something like that. These guys are the ones doing the school shootings. It's not. These are not those people. It's people with violent tendencies that tend to be loners and are angry at the world and have had some bad stuff happen to them and that kind of thing. It's not. These aren't necessarily hardened criminals that have been in jail 30 times and come out and they just decide to shoot up a school. It's not usually like that. And the kind of people that I just described are not the same kind of people as the violent loner. A violent loner is not necessarily going to have, they're probably not, in fact, going to have those kinds of connections they could easily just find a stolen gun somewhere. I mean, they're probably going to either get it from home, from a parent, or they're going to try to buy it themselves, as I believe apparently happened in this case. And so if they don't have access to that kind of weaponry, they could have access to a different kind of weapon that, yes, could certainly kill people, but isn't going to kill an entire room full of people in one clip, and will at least give people a chance to react and a chance to get out and not kill 17 people. May be able to only kill a handful of people or something like that. It's a lot different. So yeah. Let's see. Jordy Jordan says, your idea of a debate is that ARs kill less than blunt objects is childish. I'd like to point out how that many school shootings are needed for that to be surpassed. Yeah. And yeah, I know you're responding to somebody else with that. But yeah, I mean, there's all these, anytime you say, well, AR-15s, are we going to ban all knives now because people get stabbed or something of knives? I just saw this thing today. There's actually a knife rights group somewhere, which is bizarre to me, but such things apparently exist. So there's this knife rights group that goes around and tries to loosen knife restrictions in various states, which is funny. I never thought there would be such a thing, but I guess there is. Let's see. Grandma Mo says, why do Americans need assault rifles? If a killer goes in with a gun that can't fire multiple rounds, there's a better chance that more people will survive. Remember Las Vegas. Yeah, exactly. The bump stock. I mean, you heard the video of that, right? How fast those bullets could be fired. And I saw a YouTube video too about a guy that was comparing a gun with and without a bump stock. It is a huge difference. The amount of rounds you can fire with a bump stock is just crazy. I mean, the guy, when he fired, he was like, whoa, he looked like he was shot. And just because it was firing so fast, he was like, damn. He didn't even realize like what he could do with it. So it was very interesting. So yeah, Chemo says it's because even if AR-15s only kill a few people, kill a few thousand people per year, it only matters when a loved one. Yeah, said perspective. Yeah, it's all very personal too. And you also have to compare it to other countries and say, well, why is this not happening in other countries? Other countries have guns too, and yes, they have much more restrictive gun laws, but they also have people that are mentally ill. They have all kinds of other, they have all kinds of the same kinds of social problems in general that the U.S. does. But why is it that we have so much more deadly shootings? The hardware is more deadly here. It's more easy to get that kind of hardware here. Croy Tucker says, enlighten me on this bullet speed thing as a person who has a little bit of gun knowledge. For the most part, if you're shooting anything that's not a 22, you're going to injure someone fatally. So yeah, I mean, the only kind of gun that I've ever actually fired is a 22, but I did a lot of that for a couple summers when I was in Boy Scouts back when I was in high school. I fired a 22. It's a relatively low velocity round. It's not that powerful. You absolutely can certainly kill someone with a 22, but there's a pretty good chance, unless you're hit someplace that's not, unless you're hit someplace that's really vital. A 22 round going into you is probably not going to kill you. And it may not even exit your body, and it's certainly not gonna, it's not really gonna probably bounce around as much as some others. But I'm certainly not a gun expert by any stretch. But I've shot a gun. It's not like I'm not philosophically opposed to having guns or to hunting or anything else like that. But yeah, but these guns, AR-15, this is a very high velocity round, and if it goes into an organ, it is just going to tear it apart. So, yeah. Let's see. Turd Flaying Monkey, Raging Golden Eagle. We talked about it before about MG Tau. Yeah. So yeah, that was a previous live stream, right? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions on guns, and some of the opinions are interesting, some of it not so much. Yeah, it's pretty different. I've seen a lot of different takes on it in the last week or so, but it kind of follows the same usual trajectory of like, well, we're going to talk about this and about gun control, and then the conservatives are going to yell at people that want to actually enact some new gun laws and say, well, you guys shouldn't politicize this, or we shouldn't talk about this right now, because they just want to let it die down and let it go into the background, and let the gun manufacturers keep making money. So in South Carolina, I can carry my 1911 concealed carry, but I can't carry my 6-inch Bowie knife. So yeah, so those knives. That's well, yeah. As I mentioned before, there's knife rights organizations that are like the NRA, so that's kind of interesting. And I don't doubt at all that that's the knife's right. Yeah, that's the knife rights guy. What he's talking about. Broken Narcissist says, does it lower your property value after there's a video of Richard Coughlin being on her couch? Yeah, Dick, he came and visited the U.S. back in like 2010, 2011, something like that. Yeah, he was over at my house. So that was fun. Actually, I don't have that couch anymore. That was the old couch. Got a new one like 5 years ago. So yeah, I don't know. I should have sold it to some huge Coughlin fan for big money or something. So, so the difference, 45 shots a minute versus 660 shots a minute, Jordan? Are you talking about the difference between a bump stock and a non-bump stock? That sounds relatively accurate, but I don't know for sure if that's really the number. But yeah, I don't doubt that at all. Let's see. So General Shroom says, if you're not okay with semi-auto rifles, where do you draw the line? What should citizens be allowed to own? And I'm not even advocating for a particular ban on anything, like a blanket ban, I should say. I'm not saying that like, oh, I think this particular gun needs to be banned. It needs to be completely out of civilian hands, though I'm certainly open to that possibility for certain types of guns. But that would be, it would have to be pretty specific types of guns. Obviously, rifles and various other guns. I mean, semi-auto just means you have to pull the trigger every time you actually fire a round. And that, that if it's a high capacity magazine, then that's still a ton of people that you can kill very quickly. But is some balance there. There has to be some sort of balance there. And I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, like I think that it should be exactly this, but the conversation has to start somewhere. And right now, the NRA hasn't even entertained the slightest bit of reasonable dialogue about this. So, Florida school shooter got the AR-15 from a locked gun safe. The owners thought he copied the key. Yeah, I don't know who actually had the key. I heard that as well, that the parents had, or the not the parents, but the family he was staying with, because he was, if I remember correctly, he was a foster kid who was adopted, and his adoptive or foster parents both died, so he had basically nobody. Here in AZ, there are guns everywhere. Can drive out in the desert and find brass anywhere. Yeah, I've heard that as well. I know that. So those of you who watch MythBusters, when they did gun myths, when they need something high caliber or crazy, they would drive to Nevada to actually do that, not California, because California had more restrictive gun laws. But in Nevada, hell, you could probably buy one of those crazy guns that they have, like in those various African countries where they have civil wars. They'll just mount this huge machine gun on the back of a pickup truck. They could do that kind of thing out in Nevada, no problem. So So Ed Boone Sucks says the solution here, if people just treat people decent, sure. I mean, that's the hope, right? That people treat people decently, but in the age of Trump, I don't think that's really a thing at the moment. Let's see. Robert Rizzo says there are two problems with AR-15 rifles: easy to use and ability to put a lot of lead down range. Yeah, it is very much a matter of rounds per second, the number of people that you can kill in a very, very short time. That is the main issue with them. So Dirtan says bump stocks won't make you fire much faster than regular semi. Plus, you can do bump fire by looping a finger through your belt. Looping a finger through your belt. Okay. I suppose that's possible. I don't know about that, though. I mean, the thing is, it's one of those things, like you hear people say, like, well, I could kill 12 people in 30 seconds with a knife or something like that. I'm like, okay, Rambo, maybe, sure, you might be able to, under, if you were very highly trained in knife combat and you could chase people down fast enough to take that many people out with a knife in a short time. Okay, maybe, but I'm guessing that under most conditions, no, that's not probably going to work. And that's a thing that the NRA always talks about too. They're like, well, you could just kill somebody with a bomb, or you could do this, or you could do that. And like, sure, okay, you can do all of those things, I suppose, but yeah, most of that's not really very likely. So Distron says maybe limit people to things like breach blocks or lever actions. I don't know that that's necessarily the answer. I mean, sure, that would certainly reduce things, but then you are talking about gun confiscation and everything that the NRA likes to scare people about, which is nonsense anyway. But I don't think we would have to do that in order to definitely limit the issue here. Let's see. I feel like the only solution to this problem is a blanket ban on semi-automatic rifles. If you want to defend yourself, get a handgun. If you want to hunt, use a bolt action. I am completely for that. And as a general rule, I'm sure there would need to be some way that people could get something different from that, I'm sure, and that would be a hell of a lot better solution than what we have at the moment. Wonder Honky says, I wouldn't say we need any ban, we just need a licensing program. Sure, licensing, that makes sense to me too. But again, NRA is completely against it. And right now, everybody in the Republican Party is taking NRA money. So yeah. Teacher, let's see. No problem, Distron. I'll see you next time. So General Shroom says rate of fire is not the same as effectiveness. True, but all else being equal, it's one of those things. But that kind of is the same thing as what I was just saying. Like the people saying, well, I can kill 12 people in 30 seconds with a knife. I'm like, okay, probably, if conditions are perfect for you, sure. But all else being equal, skill level being equal, rate of fire is going to end up killing more people. So yeah, I'm not even sure what that argument is. Like you're saying, okay, so you're saying that it's not, you don't necessarily kill more people just because you have higher rate of fire. Like, yes, that's technically true, but how's that even useful information? Because everybody knows that you get more attempts, i.e., more bullets. You're gonna be able to have the opportunity to kill more people. Every bullet can kill someone. So I don't even know how does that even make sense? Let's see. People constantly, Ed Boone Sucks says, when people constantly push others, treat them like trash so much their whole lives, they go snap and go postal. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that have a lot of issues, a lot of mental issues and problems, and there's definitely not enough mental health to go around, and mental health is something that's not looked at enough. I don't like going down the whole road of, well, every killer, everybody that's a mass shooter is mentally ill, because I don't think that's particularly fair to people who are mentally ill. And also the much pointed out, and for good reason, for some reason, if you kill a bunch of people and you're white, then you're mentally ill. But if you're some other color, then you're either a terrorist or a thug or whatever. You're something else other than. But it's something external if you're a white guy, which is kind of, yeah. Robert Rizzo says, wonder I could be good with licensing, go through a program to be cleared to have a semi-auto rifle. Right now it's free-for-all, and no wonder we have these problems. Well, yeah, in most countries it's not a free-for-all. That's one of the big differences between the U.S. and other countries. Does not work the same way. Bugsy's Evil Deed says, when I was a kid, we made our own fireworks and set them off in the desert. If you do that now, you'll be arrested for terrorist activities. But if you're shooting an automatic rifle, cops just wave. Yeah, because it's legal, right? Yeah, you can make your own fireworks. That's a whole other thing, because that's, yeah. Grandma Mo says, Las Vegas shooter would still have been able to buy a semi-automatic rifle and a bump stock. He wouldn't have shown up as a problem with the background check. Right, that's true, but see, that's an argument for actually for banning bump stocks, because there's no regular, in fact, that's one thing that the NRA even basically signaled. They said, okay, we don't really care about bump stocks, you can ban them. They basically told Congress, you can get rid of them, we don't care. And Congress still did nothing. Still, after all that, they did nothing. So, let's see. Robert Rizzo says, hot take, the Parkland shooter wasn't mentally ill. We just like to call these shooters mentally ill to make sense of the problem. Yeah, I'd say that's probably pretty accurate. I mean, nobody likes to think that somebody is, because you hear people talk about the Parkland shooter and the stuff that he went through. The chances of this happening, if he had been born, like, because you hear politicians say, okay, this kid was pure evil. Meanwhile, you take this exact same kid, the exact same genetics, and you put him in a loving family with his, with a mother and a father from the beginning, who are good parents, et cetera. I mean, the chances of him doing this, basically nil. You put him in that scenario. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that he's not culpable. It doesn't mean that it's not his fault, but it's just funny when I hear that, like, oh, he's evil, when if you know the backstory of the kid, you know that there were a lot of factors involved in this. And again, doesn't make him not culpable, but it also makes it just bizarre when people say, oh, he's evil. It's never ever that simple. Croy Tucker says, from what I heard, the Florida shooter attended one of those NRA early shooter programs. Could very well be. I mean, but there's a lot of those types of programs. I mean, I even know someone I used to work with was trying to be an instructor for one of those types of programs, and I don't have any particular issue with those programs. I mean, if you're going to have a gun, I would much rather they actually take instruction, even if it's from the NRA, who are crazy. I do, at least for the most part, I suspect that they'll at least give some decent safety training. I would hope, but again, I've never been through any of the safety courses. The only safety course I went through with a gun was in Boy Scouts, at Boy Scout camp. So that's where I shot 22s. I actually the year, let's see, the second year that I was at Scout Camp, I actually I came in second of that week. There were probably a couple hundred Boy Scouts there, and I came in second. And the only person that beat me was a counselor, which I thought was BS, because I was like, well, of the Boy Scouts, I came in first, and I was a very good marksman. And I hadn't shot very much. That was only the second. The only other time I had ever shot was the year before. So the second year I did really well, but whatever. So I'm sure I still have it in some box of stuff, my Silver Star Award for marksmanship. Anyway, because I have very steady hands. So, General Shroom says, you are mentally ill if you think it's okay to kill innocents. Probably, more or less. Maybe. I'm not sure if it's even 100% that simple, but yeah, Robert Rizzo's, all humans have the capability to do what the Parkland shooter did. Mental illness is not the only cause of evil acts. Yes, I definitely agree with that. That makes a lot more sense to me. And I do believe that blaming evil on mental illness is a cop-out. Jertan says, it's strange to think how crazy people behave in the modern era. Back in the 70s, crazy people would kidnap and murder a dozen people over a time period of several years. Now they kill all at once. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about like serial killers. Yes, there were more serial killers back then. There's better policing tools now. There's a lot more security cameras. There's a lot more ways to capture serial killers or potential serial killers much earlier in the cycle than it used to be. So people used to be able to kill dozens and dozens of people, and in a much shorter period of time, or they would keep getting away with it. It's a lot harder to do now. So the biggest, the people with the biggest body count totals are the ones that do mass shootings. So yeah. Robert Rizzo says, if you look at the Nazis running the gas chambers, they weren't mentally ill. The scariest thing is that they were very sane and controlled their actions. Yeah, I'd say it's a bit different situation, though. I'm not sure that I would equate. I don't know that there's a way to equate that with this in this case, but it's another very interesting phenomenon yeah, it's definitely a thing, but I'm not sure if it's quite the same thing. Paranor 001 says, mental illness makes for a great scapegoat. Self-righteous belief is worse than mental illness. Yeah, if you think you are oppressed, and if you think that people have cast you aside for whatever reason unfairly, and you have an axe to grind against society, it can seem very reasonable at some point to go ahead and just take those people out that have been mean to you. Even so, like in late elementary, middle school, I was bullied in school, and I never had any kind of thoughts of shooting up the school or anything remotely like that. But it was getting to the point where I was in middle school before I switched to a different school, and the problems more or less went away. But I was getting to the point where I was wishing injury or harm to come to them. Like I was hoping that one of them would get stabbed or something, like something would happen to one of them. I wasn't going to be the one to do it, but I started to be like, if they're gonna hurt me, I want them to suffer. And I get that, like, that the movie Moonlight, where the kid get where the protagonist of the movie takes the chair and bashes his bully over from in the back with it. I really identify with that. I was like, that is exactly the kind of stuff that I wanted to do. Like, I would fantasize about that kind of thing, like just taking a cheap shot. Yeah, I wouldn't have cared if it was a cheap shot. To me, it was like, hey, they've taken enough cheap shots on me. It's time, and I would have bashed that guy with a chair too. It's I understand. I understand that rage to an extent, and it's no fun. And I can understand how they can get to that point. And again, I was never ever to that point, but I get that kind of feeling. Let's see. Vinnikin says, I read an article talking about how they believe one of the Columbine kids was a sociopath. The other kid, admission via his diary, was suicidal. Yeah, and interestingly too, um, the uh, the so Dylan Klebold, his mom has been on the speaking circuit for a few years now. Not for all that long. I think it's just fairly recently kind of broke her silence, more or less, talking about her son. And like, she really did not know, what happened. She did not understand that he was in that place. And Eric Harris, of course, this is her talking, saying that Eric Harris was the kind of the instigator of all this, which seems to bear out, even beyond what Klebold's mom is saying, that he was basically the instigator of all this. But Klebold was more than happy to go along. So yeah, it's interesting, the psychology of those two, because most school shootings are just one person. It's not two people that have it, though it's of course happened occasionally. So Ed Boon sucks. Yeah, most school shootings happen when kids were picked on. Yeah, and in most cases, in a lot of cases, the adults have failed the kids. They don't understand what's happening. They are in a situation where there's not enough supervision. Like, what would often happen in like a lot of the worst places that this would happen would be like the gym locker room. They would just go into their office or whatever, and then kids would just do whatever. And that was the source of a lot of it. And then the well, boys will be boys kind of thing. Yeah, that's another cop out, of course. So let's see. So George Erickson says, if Congress didn't do jack shit after a maniac went into an elementary school, massacred a bunch of first graders, what makes you think they'd do anything about it now? Nothing, which is exactly what's happening now. However, this movement, though, by the kids in this latest one, I mean, it is having an effect. It may not lead to anything now. Probably won't anything at the moment, because the Republicans hold all levers of government. And while Trump has said some things to lead me to believe that maybe he would be for some kinds of gun bills, but the thing is, Trump says a billion things every day, and half of them don't make any sense, and the other half contradict. Each other. It's nonsense. I have no trust in that guy at all, obviously. So Mike the Gamer Guy says, what do you think of the idea that popular media is somehow to blame for this stuff? So I lived through the 80s. I saw this whole thing about, it's violent video games and blah, blah. But the thing is, every country has violent video games. They play the same video games that we play. They're not any different. It's the same video games. And somehow we think that we're special. Like, Why? It's not. It's the same thing. We have the same media. They watch the same Hollywood movies that we watch. How is that any different? Robert Rizzo says, speaking of Nazis, what do you think about the upcoming Italian elections? There's a lot more fascists running for the Italian elections than I would like there to be. Italy is in really bad economic shape. Italy has an unemployment rate somewhere in the last I knew it was somewhere in the 18% range. It's probably low. I think it's a little bit lower now, but it had spiked up into the, like 18% range. I'm not sure what it is the second, but it's pretty bad. It's last I knew it was definitely well into double digits, and that kind of economic uncertainty and economic problems makes it very easy for them to scapegoat migrants and say, oh, it's these migrants, whatever. But of course, it has almost nothing to do with migrants, but it makes it very easy for groups to take advantage of that. So, let's see. Ended says other countries have bullies. They just don't have our gun deaths. Yeah, that's certainly true. Yeah. Paranor 001 says it takes more than just school bully to make someone cross the line. There has to be devaluation from home environment as well, at the least. Hopeful with the Parkland movement, North American culture needs an enema. I think they're the start of it. I do think they're the start of it as well. I hope that they are. A movement with some permanence like this is a place to rally around. The Sandy Hook kids were like 6 years old, so their classmates who were just little kids too, there's really nothing to rally around. They can't. It never really, yes, the parents tried to do it to some extent, but it didn't really catch on. But with these teenagers who are of voting age or close to a voting age, they were the ones that actually lived through it, and they can actually get people to rally around via Twitter and Facebook and everything else, via social media. So I think that's great. Yeah, I love that too, Robert Rizzo. They were taking Marco Rubio to task, and that's exactly what needs to happen. And they made Marco Rubio sweat. They made him sweat, and that is something that, I mean, it's not really going to lead to anything this second, but the fact that they could even get that far, that's something. So, saying, the whole, Paranor 001 says, saying it's violent games or media, saying people who play, watch have no sense of the difference between reality and fiction. I would say that's complete nonsense, of course. This is the 80s all over again. The whole, Tipper Gore and everything else with she was more of the music lyrics, but the same general principle. We consume the same media as almost every other country, as certainly any industrialized, slash first world country. So, Bugsy's evil deeds. I have back problems that cause a lot of pain. I've been in so much pain that I was raging and ended up in physical altercations. Probably a good thing I did not have a good gun in that moment. Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to be in that moment where they have a gun when they're in that kind of position. It's, not usually great. Tipper Gore, yeah, that was back in the day. I do remember that, the whole rating system on the explicit lyrics. Yeah, exactly. Oh, and so Robert Rizzo says NRA can't blame guns. Let's blame everything else. Mental illness, video games, rap culture. Yeah, any number of a bunch of different things, but definitely don't do anything for guns in terms of gun laws, because they don't want to handle anything like that. So, General Shroom says surviving a shooting does not make you an authority on gun control. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, it doesn't make you an authority on gun control, but it gives people someone to rally around and say, hey, you know what? The NRA's position is too far on this particular issue. So there's actually a response from some person or group that says, hey, you know what? Your position is extreme. We're looking for something in the middle that is definitely not the same thing that you're looking for. And I think that's positive. I mean, yes, of course, it doesn't make them experts on it, and I don't think anyone's saying that they are. I think that they're saying, hey, you know what? They have some skin in the game here. They went through this awful event. So yeah, I think this is I think this can be a rallying point, and can be a rallying point against the NRA, which is certainly to me an extreme group when it comes to this particular issue. So. Lloydie says, I'm loving these teens. We need gun reform, if not all out banning them. Countries that have all out banned them and good enough law enforcement system have few to no mass shootings. Yeah, there are countries that have almost completely banned them, and there are other countries that have not banned them that actually have plenty of guns, but you just have to go through training and that kind of thing. There are a lot fewer in all of those countries. So Ed Boone Sucks says TJ Kirk covers a lot of this about how conservatives versus libs. Yeah, I mean, so TJ, I mean, TJ's a friend of mine. He's he talks about a lot of different things. I completely disagree with his take that he's had for years now, that basically liberals and conservatives are the same. And I actually address part of that in the video that's probably coming out on Thursday this week, on one of my regular videos. But I mean, I didn't address him. I just addressed that particular belief, that they're all the same. Because he put out a tweet recently too about how Obama didn't do anything when he was president after Newtown. I'm like, well, Republicans had the House. You can't force them to take up a bill, and so it's not the same thing. And now the Republicans hold all the levers of power at the moment. If they wanted to get something done, they could do it, but of course they won't. And it's not the same thing as not controlling the House. You just can't. It's not the same thing. I don't understand how someone who talks about politics that much does not understand that. So it's frustrating, but I don't know. That's TJ sometimes. So yeah, so Paranor 001, so most countries haven't banned them, just regulated them to hell. Canada has a lot of guns. You just need a damn good reason to have. I'm not even sure that. I mean, are you Canadian? I don't know that it's that hard to get guns in Canada. Yes, obviously, I'm sure it's harder than in the U.S., but I thought if you're hunting and stuff like that, I don't know that it's that hard. But I don't know for sure, not being a Canadian. So yeah. You're Canadian, depends on the province, but yes, it can be difficult to get them. So that's something that's weird about the U.S. as well. And I actually, this is something that takes a bit of explaining to some of my friends that are from foreign countries, about how the U.S. works and about how laws are very different between states. There's laws about guns in certain states that are completely different than other states, and there's big differences between the states when it comes to that. Whereas most countries, it's a bit more uniform, and Canada maybe more by province as well. Lloydie says gun deaths here in Japan barely reach double digits, except for hunters, strictly regulated, and law enforcement. Sure, the Yakuza have guns, but they're almost never used due to Japan's laws. Yeah. I've been to Japan a few times. I was just there last in August for work, and Japan's a fantastic place. I highly recommend anyone go there that has not been there. And yes, they definitely have very, very few gun laws. They are a different kind of society. They're very homogenous sort of society. Like they're everybody's sort of way of thinking is in a much narrower band than in the US. There's certain things that like everybody agrees on in Japan that you would never find that level of agreement on pretty much anything in the US. And that's not to say that is not to say that everybody thinks the same, but there is a certain cultural bedrock that they have there that just doesn't exist in the US at all. Yeah. Let's see. So a lot of federal regulation, but each province has some autonomy like US states. Yeah, and that's to some extent, although in the US it really is even more state rights when it comes it's more by state when it comes to gun laws in general. Yeah. Robert Rizzo says, I just remember reading a story about two dudes getting into a sword fight in a crosswalk in Tokyo. Now that would be interesting. wouldn't have thought that would be a thing. Let's see. Sinful Solutions says, kind of missed the story. The evening news was talking about Israel and guns. Missed most of it. Why did they talk about it? I heard 27 plus even try to get a gun. Well, in Israel, they have everybody has to be in the military for a few years, something like that. So that's kind of different. I don't know. Not 100% sure how that works with getting guns. Paranor says, yeah, states are weird with all their laws. Lived in Florida for 2 years. Yeah, Florida also has, they've got the stand your ground laws, and that's a whole other can of worms there. Madam Crystal says, regulating guns is wise, but what about the ammo? Let's see. In the ammo, yeah, but that is actually something that should be talked about as well, because there's a big difference between different types of ammo, and there's types of ammo that there's some that's more like a standard handgun. I mean, yes, even with handguns, there's different types of ammo as well, and with rifles and all that, I mean, there are types of ammo that will rip a huge hole in you, and types of ammo that are very small and less powerful. So P. Simo says, "Hey bro, do you talk to TJ Kirk anymore?" Yeah, I talk to him occasionally. I mean, I've known TJ for years. We've had dinner a few times. It's cool. And yeah, I mean, I like TJ. I don't always agree with him. It seems like recently I disagree with him a fair amount on various things, but TJ is a friend, and I hope to hang out with him again at some point. But let's see. We don't talk a lot. We talk occasionally on Facebook or whatever. Let's see. Wonder Honky, Paranor, good to see you. Thanks for the input. Lloydie says, all weapons are strictly regulated. You need a license to own a katana, and only for display purposes. Nobody's going to have a sword fight in public. Yeah, you'd think not. Maybe that was staged. I don't know. It seems kind of weird that someone would be walking around with katana blades, but Sinful Solution is TJ has gotten worse, even though I like him. Yeah, I mean, he's always been, very strongly SJW or strongly anti-SJW, but to some extent, I mean, I think he gets a little silly with that, a lot silly with that occasionally. He repeated something that was someone's Twitter feed that it was an obvious Poe, but he was putting it up there as something that SJWs actually believe, whoever those even are these days. I don't even know what the lines are anymore, but it's like, it was kind of like, come on, these are not, you have to know, it seems like I know he's plenty bright enough to know that was probably not a real account even, but he's, Let's see. Cry Tucker says, I would say there's a lot of people who have a D next to their name but have many conservative positions. Yeah, there's certainly some, but I think that in general, Congress, people in the House I think they're diverging. There's less center now. People are definitely more on one end or the other. There's not a lot of vote switching anymore. Let's see. So George Erickson says, "I'm glad I don't get a Twitter." Well, yeah, Twitter's okay. You're not missing a ton. I mean, there's some interesting things here and there, but yeah, it's kind of a waste of time. Eventually, I start scrolling, and I'm just like, my eyes are glazed over. I'm like, oh, geez, get out somewhere else. So we're coming to the end of our time here, folks. Any final thoughts, final words about gun control or whatever? I'll read them out. I think the chat is going to end up, now that the YouTube has changed the live stream thing. I think the chat's going to end up in the video when it actually comes out, which hopefully it'll come out. But so I left Twitter. It tired me, but I like Facebook still for some reason. Yeah, I'm definitely on Facebook a lot more than Twitter, but I got back into Twitter a bit more when I started making videos again regularly last fall. So I'm no longer a YouTube partner either, because of the culling of the smaller channels, because I have over 18,000 subscribers still, but because I didn't make very many videos in the first half, the first actually 8 months of last year, I didn't make a lot of videos. So I was under the number of hours watched video limit or whatever. I was at like 3,200 hours, and I needed like 4,000, so I was like 800 hours short. But if I keep making videos regularly, which I plan to, I'll get back up to the amount that I need to keep partner again for whatever it's worth. But mostly though, I mean, if you want to support me through Patreon. I mean, I've got a Patreon as Zonstar, and I've got rewards and stuff like that. So if you want to support me through there, that's fine. But doing it, the YouTube partner was like, that's peanuts, really. So Fry Mario Ball, yeah, I'm very controversial, yeah. Yeah, according to YouTube, I'm not really particularly controversial, but I don't know, everybody's mileage varies. But anyway, I will talk to you soon, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.